Housing affordability is at an all-time low in Canada. This is according to Canada's largest bank, RBC, with their most recent report. They warned that housing affordability fell to its worst level on record in the second quarter of 2022, as households now require a record high share of income. Even with falling home prices, affordability is still declining due to rising interest rates. However, is this true for every market and every housing type? That's exactly what I'm going to be covering in this video. What's going on, guys? My name's Alex Dunbar and I'm a local realtor based out of the Surrey and Langley areas. And if this is your first time on my channel, I make weekly real estate videos pertaining to the BC and Canadian real estate market, as well as showcasing community tours across the Lower Mainland. So if that's something you're interested in seeing more of, I suggest you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified whenever I come out with a new video. While you're at it, it would be great if you hit that thumbs up button so the algorithm will push this video out to more individuals just like yourself who want to learn more about real estate. But diving right in, let's take a look at the housing affordability report done by RBC. So here we have the report by RBC. Buying a home has never been so unaffordable in Canada. So first of all, I just want to highlight the 4 key points they make at the top here. Surging interest rates drive ownership costs to record high levels. Affordability worsened everywhere in Canada. Ontario and BC are extremely challenged, and home price declines to eventually bring relief to buyers. So going back to the top comment here, surging interest rates drive ownership costs to record high levels. If you're unfamiliar and haven't seen some of my previous videos, the rule of thumb is that for every 1% increase in interest rates, we see about a 10% decrease in buying power. So if we see a 10% decrease in home prices, then it would stay affordable. However, if we don't see home prices come down by that much, then your affordability actually has gone down, even if home prices have come down. And we'll look at that in a minute here. And so affordability worsened everywhere in Canada. They're stating that the affordability across Canada has worsened, which isn't actually true when we get down to the next chart I'm going to show you, but just keep this in mind as it does briefly mention that most markets with only parts of the prairies in Quebec haven't experienced deeper erosion in the past. But again, not necessarily true. Keep that in mind. Ontario and BC buyers extremely challenged. Now, this has always been the case. They've always been the two most expensive markets. So once again, keep this in mind when we go to look at the next chart. And home price declines to eventually bring relief to buyers. So what they're stating here is the sharp housing market correction that began in the spring is rolling back some of the spectacular price gains made during the pandemic. We expect benchmark prices to fall 14% nationwide by next spring, more so in Ontario and BC. Now, the issue with this is that the majority of home prices have already fallen by this much in those markets. It's not reflected quite yet in some of the property types in regards to benchmark price, but benchmark price is a lagging indicator. So we're not going to see the full extent of what's happened for the next couple of months. However, if you're to look at the median or average prices, it makes it a lot more apparent. And of course, keep in mind, you need to be using these numbers in combination with one another to get a better overall picture of what's going on in the market. But anyways, as they stated, this should help lower ownership costs next year, but the likelihood of further rate hikes from the Bank of Canada is poised to intensify affordability pressures before then. We have another rate hike coming up, 2 meetings, I believe, before the end of the year. So it's really going to depend on what happens at those meetings because of the fact that, of course, as I already mentioned, 1% is going to decrease buying power by 10%, which is definitely going to have an impact on the market, but it's not a be-all end-all. Just because rates are to go up 1% doesn't necessarily mean prices are going to come down 10%. As we've already seen with the overnight lending rate going up from 0.25 to 3.25, a full 3% since the beginning of the year. Now, because of the way the stress test works, buyers' purchasing power wasn't immediately eroded, but I'm not going to get into the specifics behind that in this video. However, all you need to know is that purchasing power is down about 15 to 20% right now, and clearly it's not a wash across the board. Not all property types are down that much. Some are more, some are less, but we're just going to have to see what happens going into the future. Moving on, I want you to take a look at this chart. So this is where they're showing that the aggregate ownership costs as a percentage of median household is 60%. Detached is almost 66%, 41% for the long-term average. Condo averages are just around 42%. But when they take into combination absolutely everything here, that's the number they're coming out with. However, the issue with this is that they're combining all markets across Canada. And that's obviously going to skew the data because of markets like BC and Ontario. So using the 60% number isn't really a great representation of what's actually going on in the market. And what we need to do is actually look at each individual market, which we're going to do next. So as we move down, we can see that Canada's housing markets make history, but in a bad way. So as I mentioned, the policy rate is up 300 basis points to date, with another 75 basis points on the way by the year end, in their opinion. So we'll have to see how much it does end up going up. But as we see here, so far, the impact has been historic. RBC's aggregate affordability measures was thrusted into record high territory nationally. This is where they come up with 60%. In Victoria, BC, 67.6%. Vancouver, 90.2%. Toronto, 83% in the second quarter of 2022. So this is what's really pulling that national average up, is these two specific markets where home prices are significantly greater than the rest of the country. But when we come down here and actually look at the affordability of these different areas across the country, we can see that Canada as a whole, this is where they get the 60% once again, but it's only really Victoria, Greater Vancouver, the Greater Toronto area, and Halifax that are at peak housing affordability issues. The rest of these markets aren't even close to what their record levels were. So is this really a fair statement to make that housing across the entire country is at its worst affordability ever? In my opinion, no. It's only these specific markets. Also, I forgot to mention Ottawa, so we will add that one in there too. But unfortunately, the majority of Canada essentially doesn't think that anything else exists outside of the Greater Toronto and Greater Vancouver area, or at least the people that live there feel that way. However, there is a ton of affordable housing across the country, just not in the areas that people want to live. So to make the broad statement that Canadian real estate is the least affordable it's ever been isn't necessarily fair. And so the point I want to make here is that they use these sensationalized headlines in the news articles and media articles. However, most people just read those and take it as it is without actually taking a look into it. This is the reason why we have to actually dive into the data, because as I said, it's not actually a great representation of the overall affordability in the rest of Canada. And just before I finish off this video, I want to address a few issues I had with the data from the report. First of all, I was unable to find what cities were included in the Greater Vancouver area. I would assume it would only be cities that are part of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, if that's where they're getting the data from, but I could be wrong. However, if this is the case, they missed out on many cities nearby that are part of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board, but still considered part of Metro Vancouver. These are places like Delta, Surrey, and Langley, and those would bring those numbers down pretty significantly. Second is the fact that they only showed single-family detached homes, condos, and aggregate pricing. Although other property types would be included in the aggregate measure, I don't think this is a fair representation of housing affordability. For context, the benchmark price of a detached single-family home in the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver is just under $2 million, whereas a townhome is just over $1 million, nearly half the price. I've been saying this for a while now, but times have changed, and it's not a realistic expectation for the large majority of families to own a single-family detached home anymore, just like their parents did. Specifically in densely populated and highly popular areas like the Greater Vancouver and Greater Toronto area. We're moving towards what I like to call a townhome economy, where the new standard for most families will be exactly that, a townhome. In reality, having all the extra space, a backyard, and not sharing walls is really a luxury, not a requirement. Look at the other parts of the world and this becomes very apparent. I'll probably get some flack for this, but unfortunately, there is a decent amount of entitlement out there that people feel they deserve to own a home where they grew up simply because, well, they grew up there. I was born and raised in Greater Vancouver, and I've lived here my entire life, and I don't feel that way whatsoever. I'm gonna do everything in my power to purchase a single family home in my future, but I don't feel entitled to it. I currently live in a condo, and that's okay. I've accepted that I may never own a single family home if I want to live in the area that I grew up in. I could sell my condo and move to Calgary or Edmonton or several other places and buy a detached single family home with the proceeds, but I choose to sacrifice the size of my home for the location that I want to live in. And that's a decision that many of us will have to make if we don't find ourselves within the upper income brackets or getting a nice inheritance. And with that, I digress. To conclude, it is expected that home prices will continue to come down slightly and adjust to the higher interest rates, but I wouldn't expect anything substantial, especially in the markets outside of Greater Vancouver and the GTA. But will this make a massive impact on affordability? I'm not convinced. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your comments, so leave them down below and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you did get any sort of value whatsoever from today's video, all I ask is that you hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more videos just like this one, I suggest you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified whenever I come out with a new video. Lastly, if you are considering buying or selling in Surrey, Langley, or any of the surrounding communities for that matter, or you just want to talk about real estate, you can click the first link down in the description to book a call with me at a time that works best for you. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.